Welcome to Business as Unusual. This is the first of our weekly sessions where we'll deep dive into how a particular industry is functioning during the pandemic and whatever comes after. Hopefully, we'll give you some inspiration on events and how to run them. This week, we're examining those with Sarah Parsonage, who is one, a very good friend of mine, and two, just brilliant at running events. And we'll probably tell you a bit more about why I say that shortly. But Sarah, before we jump into sort of the main meat of the webinar, would you mind giving us a bit of personal background, and we'll come to what you're doing as a job later on?
Personal background. Ooh, okay. So I'm originally from London, and I lived in Bristol for 10 years, which is how we met, in a really random way. That's a very different story. And I moved back to London about 6 years ago, which was work. And to be honest, with one question, that kind of is personal and work. Like, I don't really do anything remotely fun outside of that. That's not true. I do, but so much of it is taken up by one question, which is work. But yeah, so I live in London. I'm currently residing in Chiswick in these crazy times. And I too have been doing some baking. Sausage rolls and chocolate chip cookies have been my two things.
I saw the picture of your sausage rolls as well. They look very good. And am I right in thinking that you're a good Samaritan and you took them round to friends and neighbours?
I did. Yeah, so anyone I could walk to, we did the 2 metre drop, as we're calling it, because I don't have a sweet tooth. So I made all of these cookies and then had to deliver them to people that were in more need than I. Man,
you just put the house prices up in Chiswick if you published a picture of those sausage rolls online. They looked great. Brilliant. Thank you for that. And how long have you been involved in events?
Oh, Christ. Sorry. A long time.
There will be further blasphemy and bad language on this webinar, everybody.
That was a good start, wasn't it? 15 years, maybe? A long time, because I started very young. I was only 17 when I had my first job in events, which was at an events agency. So yeah, long time.
Okay, cool. Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I am the co-founder of an agency called Noisy Little Monkey. I also founded an event called Digital Gaggle, which is a digital marketing meetup that we hold in Bristol twice a year. And after meeting Sarah quite a while ago, she also gave us a lot of help making that thing work and be the really quite odd but successful little event it is now. So I know that when Sarah gives us advice, it works from personal experience. So let's get on to what we're going to be talking about today. We're looking at corporate events, and with all of these business as unusual webinars and maybe even podcasts, which we were going to start a podcast like 2 years ago, never got around to it. Makes me think now, wow, should have started a podcast, any podcast. We'd be billionaires during the lockdown. But there we are. We didn't do that. Today we're looking at the scarcity of money, the abundance of uncertainty, and some hope of opportunity. So 2 scary things and a little bit of hope as we go through lockdown. We should be finished at around 4 o'clock. We hope to have plenty of time for questions at the end. And I'm going to ask Sarah now just to tell us a little bit about one question which she kind of alluded to earlier. Sarah, tell us more about that.
So one question I started in 2016. It's a media company that's designed predominantly, as it says, very helpfully on that screen, to challenge the way that we think about our everyday. So it started in event form. I suppose you could liken it to a conference, although we tend not to call it an event as such because it does take many forms. And essentially we invite different perspectives, different industries, different people to answer one question. Mm-hmm. So the greatest example, I think, is May last year, our annual event. We asked, does purpose really drive profit? And that was then answered from the perspective of the Army, Patagonia, Bloomberg, the Obama campaign, polling research with Joe, who's also spoken at Digital Gaggle. So that's the kind of premise of that. And off the events, we also produce a lot of different content, and we have a community that's a membership, because One Question is members only.
Cool. Which is quite different for an event, right? This members only thing.
Yeah. Yeah, hence why I tend not to call it an event and sort of call it other, maybe arguably slightly more wanky things like a conversation or an experience, which is true. When you experience it, that's exactly what it is. But obviously when you're talking about it, it does sort of sound a bit eye-rolly, but it's very much true, because it is about how it makes you feel in the room, and it's all about the conversation that you have, and the fact that if we bring different businesses together to answer some big challenges that affect all businesses and arguably affect society. And if we try and do that together rather than in these echo chambers and silos that we've sort of naturally created, then we're going to stand a far greater chance of actually solving those. So that's the kind of premise, I suppose.
And just because, as Sarah says, it sounds really wanky. This kind of, it's an experience and all of that kind of thing. My relationship with it is I've been a couple of times and have ducked out a couple of times, for which I am eternally sorrowful. But the 2 times I went, one was really just very inspiring, and I got to sit next to, oh come on now, forgotten his name, big guy, vapes indoors, always wears a waistcoat, Rory Sutherland.
Yeah.
Just, man, I kind of was in love with him, because he was sitting in the front row, sat next to me after he'd done his little talk, his big talk, and it was brilliant. And someone else was talking, and he was vaping, massive, great lungfuls, and then doing 2 or 3 extra breaths in and exhaling totally clean air. And I was like, this guy's a hero. That's not the only good thing about the event. I think the thing that it's a B2B event, and it absolutely changed my life. I went along to listen to the "Can humanity and technology work together for good?" That was the one question to the one I went to most recently. And you had Giles Dooley, the ex-fashion photographer, ex-reportage photographer, now reportage photographer again, talking about how his one of his projects that focuses on refugees and people from war-torn countries he got blown up by a landmine, and it's just an incredible story. And at the end of it, I thought, wow, I need to go and help out. And I went out and drove a taxi for free for refugees in Lesbos at the refugee centre prison camp just outside Mytilene. I drove people to doctor's appointments and to the beach and all sorts of things. And just loved it. Got yelled at as Mr. John, as I drove around Mytilene, and people jumped in my free taxi, and I took them to and from places. And it was just a small thing, very, very small thing. And I'm not trying to be self-serving. I'm just saying this is why, one of the reasons I think we have Sarah on this call is she runs events that are life-changing, but they're B2B events. And that's amazing. I'm so blessed to know you. I'll stop playing Smoke Up Your Arse now, and we'll move on.
Later.
Now I'm going to blow smoke up my own arse. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to very quickly say, if you don't know Noisy Little Monkey, who are hosting this webinar, don't know why I left a space. We are a HubSpot Diamond partner, and we are cutting the costs of doing B2B business through technical SEO, marketing automation, and sales enablement. We have worked with some of those people on your screen. In fact, all of the people on your screen. Don't know. There's no point in a cred stack if you've not worked for them. Let's move on to the real thing, which is this. My nephew Finley. He is 14 this month. On Friday, and I am going to give him £10 on top of his normal Amazon voucher that I send him, because I'm full of imagination. I'm going to give him an additional £10 on the top of that for every time that I say, in these unprecedented times, in these unusual times, in these strange times, in these mysterious times, in these weird times. I'm so sick and tired of saying it. Please, Sarah, you say it, because I'm not going to give him money for any transgressions that you make using that phrase, but I'm going to do that. So please put it in the chat if I do that, so that I can up Finley's money and hopefully he can, well, maybe spend it on some new bedding, because the dog that you're seeing him cuddle there pissed on my expensive bedding. So, events. Let's start with some facts or some stats. Whether they're facts, I don't know, but the statistics that I was looking at, the UK event sector brings in over £41 billion in money from travellers overseas. Not this month, I suspect, is not contributing much to that. But that was in 2017. That's vast, absolutely vast. And that's just money coming in from overseas. Sarah, you were telling me something about the value of TED.
Yeah, so I think TED was last valued at 66 million, and that was in 2017. Just because I think TED is an event, obviously TEDx is the kind of more, the kind of conference arm that most people know. And then there's the TED element every year, which is the sort of 4-day event in the States. And then they have the corporate side of TED. And obviously they're most known for the TED videos. And so obviously it is kind of more entertainment, I think, than just events. But I still think it's fascinating that they alone are worth that.
Yeah, it's a key example of how important events are worldwide, I guess, or certainly in UK, NAM, APAC, where we've got that kind of that ecosystem around them. The thing that I thought was very interesting about that stat of the 41 something billion, a little under 35 billion of that is related to corporate events. I was thinking, oh, that's all music festivals. But no, it's corporate events.
Yeah.
So we really do need to come out the other side of this.
We will.
And quick, right?
We will.
Listen to her calming tone. We will.
We will.
So a bit more closer to home, perhaps, for the people along on the webinar and some of the people who are watching this or listening to this back. The events sector employs over 500,000 people in 25,000 events businesses. That was a report. I haven't got the date on that, but I think it was 2018. And that doesn't include most of the people on this call, I suspect, who are running events in some sort of in-house capacity or as part of a marketing agency, maybe. I think there are a few people who I noticed coming through the registrations who were running big exhibitions and running big events, or were events agencies, but most people appear to be running events for their business, if that makes sense. And then looking at the event Pulse report from Eventbrite, the most people who are running corporate events are using them to generate profit, do leads, a bit of education and training, bringing people together, and brand awareness. And so, and feel free to nab these stats, everybody, later on. That I've cited them, so you can hopefully use them without fear of being proved wrong. And then the other thing, the final one before we come to what can we do right now, is that businesses, there were 1.48 million business events that took place in UK venues, so like outside of people's offices, in 2018. And if you think back to the stat about why are we running corporate events, that's 370. If we don't run any more events for the next 6 months, that's over 150,000 events that aren't generating profit, over 100,000 that aren't generating leads, and over 30,000 that aren't generating marketing content. I think we can probably do without the ones that are generating marketing content. No offense intended to anybody who's using them to generate content, but probably some taken, for which I nearly apologize. But yeah, gosh, there's so much crap on the internet. Do we need any more content? He said producing content. Oh my word, the irony of the whole thing. Anyway, so the key problems that everybody's facing across all of the sectors, as far as I can see it at the minute, is money. Sarah, I've added and resources onto here because that was the first thing that you said to me when we were talking about this, is you said money and resources. So what effect is the lack of both of those things having on the sector right now? Well,
obviously there's a lack of both right at this moment, as of today. Legally we can't run any events, but also legally we can't leave our house. So there's a huge impact on the industry. And I think right now the kind of conversation around events as of Wednesday's day is quite a difficult one. because obviously we know that budgets are going to become smaller, if not non-existent, for a lot of companies. And also there's the resource, which is why when we were chatting about this originally, I added that on, because everybody knows, whatever stage of career that you are, that running events is not a one-man job. And so obviously if we've got a lot of employees on furlough at the moment, we don't know how long that's going to go on for, or if a lot of employees have been sadly made redundant, then obviously that's going to change the outlook as well. So this for me very much feels like a planning conversation in terms of what happens next, and where do we get that money from? Where do we secure budget? If our marketing budget has been halved or worse, then how do we convince to get some budget back, et cetera, et cetera.
And what thoughts have you had on that kind of stuff? Or have you had any?
Well, so as is my way, John, which you will not be surprised by, I kind of slightly changed the question. And obviously it is on brand for me to do that, so I kind of feel I can get away with it, but also
you are the queen of questions.
Yeah, well, because for me obviously the question is, how do we get budget to run an event? And I'm sure on this particular call there are a breadth of different people running events for your own business and part of your marketing team, perhaps as an agency or a freelancer or a consultant for other people. And so it might be a case of securing budget for a new event that you would normally run, for example, in October. Or it might be talking to partners that would normally fund the event, and obviously they've either, well, I would hope they've sort of paused it as opposed to cancelled it. Or it might be that the company had an event planned and actually you now need to look at other ways of doing it. So there's kind of lots of different, there's not really a one size fits all. But for me, the interesting bit of all of this was more about why. Getting the budget and getting the budget back, or retaining the budget, depending which way you look on it, or selling into partners and sponsors. This is the opportunity, which is why I'm kind of playing with your flow as well, to really think about why the event exists in the first place. Because there's all the questions that then come out of that conversation of, why am I doing this? What are my objectives? Who am I doing it for? What's important? And once you start looking at those, you're almost starting at the end to come back. And then it's a time of, especially for those of us that are perhaps doing the same event or doing a repeat event that we've done every year for the last 2 or 3 years, and it happens at the same venue and it happens in the same month. But unfortunately, with the kind of health crisis that we're going through now, you find yourself in a situation of, I'm going to have to fight to keep that event, or I don't have the same budget, or it looks very different, or... And so it then brings about other questions of, well, actually, why are we doing this? What's the objectives for it? Who's going to attend? What's it going to look like? Does it need to be the same event? Does it need to have the same number of people? Does size matter, in the sense that if it was historically for 250 people and it was for 100 people, would your company achieve its objectives? Does it need to have that many speakers? Does it even need to be a conference? Could it be a round table? Could it be a breakfast? Could it be a dinner? And so I think by really evaluating and having the opportunity and the time, which we don't always get, to kind of look at why the event exists and what the purpose is for it, then enables you to then look at the budget. Because even if the event is going to stay exactly the same and in the same iteration, by doing that exercise, you then go back to the board, line manager, company, sponsors, whoever it might be, and say, well, actually, we've explored why this is important. And actually, if we do it like this, this, and this, and this, we still need the same budget, but we're going to achieve X, Y, Z. And likewise, it also might be that you say, well, actually, in this year, we don't have the same budget, but I'm going to hold on to that and I'm going to retain it because I'm going to run it as a roundtable, because we still get the same conversation. We still get the same opportunity for networking. We still get the ability to talk about our products, even though obviously no pictures at events is a sort of rule of thumb. And so I think in some respects, by answering and asking the sort of money and resources question, it also enables us to really think about what the objectives are, because there are so many events and those stats have already said it. And so now's the opportunity, I think, to kind of stand out from the crowd, look at what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then you'll find that there will be budget out there still. It will just be a slightly harder fight to get it. And so if there's more value, and arguably from value comes profit, in reviewing what you're already doing, then it will work quite well for you.
Yeah. So you're saying that for those of us who aren't furloughed, because obviously legally we can't work for our employer, but for those of us who aren't furloughed now, and for those of us who are self-employed, right? There's plenty of us in that boat who need to maybe take stock. It sounds like you're saying we can use this time. Well, one of the things we can use this time for is actually refocusing around what are the outcomes, what are the outputs I want from this event, whether that's generating leads or profit or brand awareness or whatever, just some relationships. And then who are the right people that I need to put in the top of my funnel, so to speak, to get that out. So it's a time to refocus.
I think so, yeah. And again, as a sort of caveat, it does depend at what stage you're in. I think anybody that, like myself, anybody that was running an event in this period and now can't, and it doesn't know when they next will be able to. When it comes to finances, it's a case of reschedule first and foremost. If you can do it later in the year, or you can move it into next year, then do.
And that was something that you said to us when we were. I'm surprised I remembered it actually, because we put quite a lot of alcohol into each other, and I said, I think we're probably going to cancel Digital Gaggle, and you went, don't cancel Digital Gaggle, reschedule, just postpone. And we did it. And just, if anybody out there is, probably we may be a bit late for that given the timing of this webinar, but if anybody has got events that they're thinking that they may need to cancel, if you can have that discussion about postponing, I'd urge you to do so, because we saw very, very little dropout. And in terms of so for me, as someone who runs a business that has an event to generate us money, we were looking at quite a lot of cash that we were going to have to outlay, and just to stay afloat for the next few months. And of course we're doing that. It's been 10 years of blood, sweat and tears. We don't want to just give it up. And I suspect most business owners, small business owners, I am both small and a small business owner, are very much like me. But what was brilliant was following that advice and then us not seeing thousands of pounds worth of refunds go out the door.
Yeah.
Because people, if you run a good enough event, people don't want to cancel, right? They want to come back because they know that it'll be great in our case, November. When's One Question back on?
September the 30th.
Nice.
And we moved it. So we had to do that. And I was very fortunate because I think, I talked to you about it because I'd done the same thing. We'd got 3 or 4 speakers. We'd got Jess Phillips is speaking for us. And I had to move 3, 4 relatively high profile speakers quite quickly. And this year we've done a partnership with Bloomberg. So they're hosting their event. So I had a lot of pieces in the air that I had to move quite quickly, and we managed to secure another date. But I think, and I also think that this is the opportunity in which you can also leverage with those venues, because the payment thing is always the issue that kills so many. I don't mean literally, but it's such a struggle for so many event companies because of the layout up front. Obviously, the opportunity that we have right now, and I am an absolute eternal optimist, so I think it's really important that I kind of put that out there first. But when you have really good relationships with venues, you can put in place venue payments, stagger them across the time that you need them. No venue is going to be chasing you for a venue payment right now, and if they are, then you can certainly send them my way. And I'll have that conversation with them, and then scheduling it when we do start to come out of this and we do start to recover. And I think that's really important. And I think obviously there is, of course, the virtual route as well. If it is impossible to reschedule your event, then you can take it online. But I think it comes back to my same point, which I say again, is that you have to think about why. Does it work online? Because it's actually okay if it doesn't. It's that old adage, isn't it? We just because we have something to say doesn't mean we always have to say it. If you don't have something useful to say, then does it work online? Because if it doesn't, then don't do it. If you had an event and a lot of the sponsors have pulled because it's not going to take place, so you can replicate it online. There are other companies that are still supporting webinars. I saw Rand from Spark Toro put something out on Twitter. For anyone who knows him, he's a genius in kind of the startup search world. And he put out on Twitter that he would financially support webinars that had the right audience for him, had the right customer that he's trying to talk to, and had the right brand.
So and actually, you could use Spark Toro to look at do some research around some of those people you want to get to your events. That's a great tool. Why didn't I get him to sponsor this? Damn it, Rand!
But that's a really good example. So there is, but for me, it does always come back to, why are we doing this? Why is it still important? Because I think the one thing that we will see from an events industry is that we will see a bit of a reset, which isn't always a bad thing. And we'll see a lot of events that perhaps have existed for the sake of existence, and perhaps they've become a bit of a cash cow and they actually don't add an awful lot of value. Perhaps they won't exist in the same iteration. So it is difficult, because obviously you're planning for the unknown, as we're coming on to. And so when you're planning for the unknown, it's very difficult to retain budget, secure budget, get more budget, etc., etc. But there are ways of doing it, but it does come back to what the real value of the event is. And then you can shape it in so many different ways.
So just to kind of, I was desperately trying to find out how I could keep that thing on my screen and bring up some notes, because this is my first webinar. So I'm like that. What the hell am I doing?
I can send you my notes.
But for the viewers at home, let's focus on why. Let's take this opportunity, if we can, and we've got the headspace, the mental agility, and the payments coming in to pay the mortgage. Let's focus on what the event's for, why you're doing it, and what value you're adding. And if you have events that are still in the diary, but you think probably are not really likely to happen on that date, go for the reschedule every time. Don't cancel if you can, because cash flow and goodwill from people, that people's goodwill is strong right now. So let's leave at that. Make sure you talk to the venue. How can they help? A massive shout out to the Watershed Cinema in Bristol. They have been incredible. They were really, really lovely and gave us a great deal on moving the event. And, you know, it's not like they don't have people to pay. So they've been incredibly helpful. Ensure that your event is adding value once you've done that refocus. And I guess that's to sponsors and delegates and everybody. And then maybe think about it being digital. Well, two things. Think about, is it a digital event? Could you just run it like this? It's to potentially a smaller audience than we would do for digital gaggle, but it's a bit more focused. So could you take it digital? And ask yourself, actually, is it really even adding any value, or are you just part of the noise? And I agree with you. I think there are...
I didn't say that.
No, you didn't. You didn't. I've praised that. I've shortened what you said into something a bit more brutal. But I think there are, and maybe I'm saying this and not you, and I am saying this, there are plenty of events that don't add value, that are clearly just there to either line the pockets of the people who run it, or line the pockets of the sponsors. And you feel, and we're past that. I think in the 21st century, everybody is past, oh my goodness, I have to go through, you know, just a freaking forest of salesmen gits in their shiny suits to be able to get to the one venue where I want to hear someone speak, and actually that person is pitching. There are still those events still exist. They were beginning to struggle in a bull market, I think, and we are now in what is not even close to that. That's not. We've gone way past bear. I think, as you're right. They may not come back, and certainly if you're feeling a bit disenfranchised at your own event, it might be worth thinking, well, how can we change that up? Get back to focusing on the why we did it in the first place, and see where we can go. Cool.
I think what I would just want to add to that point, I think that doesn't just apply to events, right? That is marketing as a whole. Like there is so much marketing activity out there that doesn't necessarily need to be out there. And I think we are saturated in the event space, and it is really difficult. If you ask yourself the question, what was the best event that I went to in the UK last year?
Digital gaggle.
One question. But you see how many people can come up with more than two, maybe.
Yeah.
And often it's the ones that are really intimate. It's the ones that you feel are personal as well as a professional connection. It's the one you hear from someone super inspiring. You don't hear the SaaS pitch. You remember the SaaS pitch, you know. So I think that is fair. And obviously nobody on that call, I'm sure, is party to that. But I do think it's a good reset for all of us, right? It's a good reset to think, does this even need to be an event? Could this be something else? Could it look differently? And coming back to the point of the events as a catch-all phrase, but it can be a breakfast reception. It can be a really smart conversation over cocktails. It can be so many different experiences, which is essentially what we're all creating.
Yeah, and when we get back out there, people, well, we'll come to opportunity. Yeah, we did a supper club. How many did we do? One or two, I think. And that was just great. We had some we had some high-powered people, high-level people in the room, which was brilliant. And we just let them have a chat. There was a monkey, not a real monkey. Obviously, we're Noisy Little Monkey. There was an employee of Noisy Little Monkey on each table just to facilitate that chat. And we had someone come up and talk about diversity in employment, which is absolutely nothing. You know, that's not what these marketing managers were expecting, but that's what they got. And they all found it tremendously inspiring and went away and changed some stuff. And just by us being there, they associate that good feeling with us. And I guess that's, you know, what you've been doing all your working life, it feels like. And it takes a while for some of us old white guys in business to go, we don't need to pitch every mofo that walks through the door. We can just actually be a good experience, and they'll associate us with that. I don't know why you're the events expert. I'm just parroting stuff now.
The best kind of sales is no sale.
Best kind of sales is no sale. Someone tweet that. Hashtag it. I don't know what with. I don't really know how hashtags work. Right. So let's talk about how we're coping with uncertainty before we come to opportunity. So we've got another 10 minutes on uncertainty and opportunity, maybe 20.
Okay. Well, yeah, you'll have to just keep me in check for time because I'll just ramble on otherwise.
Okay.
So this is really this. I mean, when you told me about uncertainty, I was like, goodness me, is there anything that's certain right now? Are we just talking about events, or are we going to talk about everything? And it's, you know, I'm going to use we're in a new normal, right? We're in a new normal where everything has changed. And so the expression that I've used with my chairman, with my board, with sponsors, with clients, with so many different people in the last, I probably used it with you in one of our virtual coffee chats, John, is that we are forecasting into kind of an abyss because we just don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. We don't know when the country will come out of lockdown, and when it does, what will be the mandate for the kind of size of event that you can run. You know, obviously we know that the Olympics, Wimbledon, Edinburgh Festival have all been cancelled this year. If you work in marketing, you obviously Cannes Lions has been cancelled. It was originally moved to October, and that's now been cancelled. And this leads on to opportunity, so it's quite a nice segue. But so there's so much uncertainty. And so you can only, I think it's not putting yourself under too much pressure to forecast for something that you just absolutely have no idea from, but forecasting scenarios.
Yeah.
It comes back to my my previous point, really, which is you can plan for the future. You know, we can look to what we're doing next, and you can use this time to, as we've already discussed, review, reshape, revise your event. Look at what its values are, look at what your objectives are, start from the end, work back, and then start forecasting that and have a really robust pitch, so you can start having those conversations with confidence that you will be able to run your event in October, or actually you're going to run a virtual event in July, or you're going to launch the new year with your corporate event, or you're going to run 2 events next year.
So actually, even if you're on this call and you're furloughed, do think about those events, because actually what you've just said makes perfect sense to people who are furloughed and to people who are still working, which is refine it and go back and pitch that idea, that revised idea, or that completely new idea. And certainly if you're furloughed and you're having that weekly call with your boss and you can say, I've had some great ideas about X, Y, and Z, I can't wait to get back so I can implement them. You've got that in your arsenal, I suppose, when you're talking about that. What if anything can events teams do to sort of authentically communicate with their stakeholders and delegates right now?
When you say authentically, do you mean through the channel in which they do it, or how they do it?
I guess how, and the content. I've had a few. I think we've all had plenty of. This isn't events specific, and in fact, actually, there's not too many events that are doing it, but a few going. This is how we're coping with COVID-19, and I'm like that. You're a chip shop. No, it's not a chip shop. They don't. They just sell me chips. That's good. Well, not good if you look at my gut, but that's good. There are so many businesses I've not dealt with for what feels like decades, who have taken this opportunity to tell me how they're coping with COVID-19, and I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, so I think that's
events are in the same boat sometimes.
I think everybody's in that boat right now. And my kind of view of that is always, unless you're a scientist, a doctor, or the government, then you probably don't need to be communicating your viewpoint on a national health crisis, on a pandemic.
Right.
Because no one really wants to know. And to be honest, I think I speak for all of us when I say there is so much information out there. You only have to open Twitter to be inundated with either a wealth of positivity or a wealth of negativity, depending on whichever given day it is. So I think, but what you can do, and this applies to marketing, as you will well know as events, is look through it the lens of this. What's this going to change, and how is this going to impact your business? How are you talking to stakeholders? And if you're fighting for event, it comes back to, okay, this is really important because it generated this much money, it boosted team morale, we got this many leads off it, we built relationships with our clients without even trying. These are all the wins. And if you're communicating to delegates like you guys would have done through digital gaggle, and like I've had to do, that it's being really honest. Obviously, everybody knows that you're not in a position to be able to run that event, but you're going to be back. And let's be honest, when we come back and we come out of it, the first thing everyone's going to want to do is they're going to be craving conversation. They're going to want to be out there networking, being with people, being in rooms, learning. And that then creates what we'll come on to next, this massive opportunity.
Let's go there. Take us to opportunity, because we've talked enough about the negative. Let's talk about the positive. Oh, by the way, someone said in the chat that you shouldn't really talk to your boss on your weekly phone call about ideas you've had for the business, because that's against the law. And while I agree that your boss shouldn't press you to work and shouldn't press you to have ideas, if you want to get off furlough more quickly, it might be useful to have some pitches where you say, look, when we get back, I need to start real early because these are the ideas I've had. So I guess I am probably slightly encouraging people to break the law. But then I suspect that's probably my natural state of being, always slightly break the law. I don't drive at 30 miles an hour. Actually, I do, but I don't drive at 70. I typically drive at 77.
Yeah,
I
don't know fully government legislation on furlough, but I do think that it definitely doesn't.
Neither do they.
And I think if you're having a conversation, then it's really important to showcase ideas. That can't be argued as trading, for sure.
As long as they're not asking you to specifically work. If they're asking you to prepare it, then you're in really dodgy legal ground.
Well, if they're asking you, then that's not you sharing your ideas. That's them asking.
Exactly. If an idea comes to you while you're walking your dog on your hour of daily mandated exercise, share it. Katie's just put in the chat, noisy little monkey takes no responsibility for breaking the law. I rather think it does. I'm a director. Oops. Don't break the law.
Let's move very quickly onto opportunity.
Yeah.
Segue out of that and into something else. So this obviously is the most important bit, and I did caveat at the beginning of this that I am the eternal optimist, but this is an opportunity. And whilst, as John kind of pointed out more brutally, there are going to be a lot of events that do struggle to come back, perhaps because they have been a bit more cookie cutter and they've kind of lost their way over time. But the exceptional events will come back with a vengeance. I wrote, so one question at the moment is doing a selection of essays with our members. So every week we release a new essay from a different member with a different perspective. And actually what we've asked them to do very simply is, what questions should we be asking and answering? And so I launched saying, have we underestimated the importance of real life relationships? And I think that for me is a really exciting time, because I think arguably we have, albeit we probably haven't intended to. And there's a lot that good events offer in real life that cannot be replaced through technology, through endless business meetings, not only the kind of more structured innovation and learnings, but also those sort of serendipitous moments that happen when you meet somebody for coffee. And certainly it's what One Question has kind of built its brand around. It's those conversations that aren't expected that you're probably all missing because you're used to being in an office with other people and going to grab a coffee and having a chat about something.
Oh, yeah,
When you do that in an event, that's where a lot of business gets done. That's where a lot of inspiration comes from. That's those serendipitous moments that actually breed that connection, which is where a lot of business is done. You know, it sounds quite sort of fluffy and arguably romantic, but actually the reality is that we like doing business with, or we do business with people we like. And so for me, the opportunity for when we come out of this period and the country is recovering, is that those real life relationships, those real life conversations are going to become even more important. And it's our job to sustain those.
Yeah. And yeah, your point about that kind of just the hubbub that you get at a good event and you get in a good office, sparking ideas, inspiring people to try different things is, that's going to be, people are going to be so reaching out for that. And as you say, what underlines that, I think, is when we go back to some of those stats from those surveys at the beginning, I think there's like 38%, maybe 40% of corporate events are run just to build relationships. And that is
one learning, I think, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, and it's one of those kind of wanky stats that we're both so object to, but also suckered by occasionally, where we really do crave that. Even those of us who are kind of, I think, are we calling them ambiverts now? I think I'm an ambivert. So if I have enough coffee and beer, I'm friendly with other humans, but then most of the time I don't really like being outside. And certainly events where I have to meet new people, I really struggle with that quite a lot. And what I find is, even as someone who feels quite introverted at those events, just having a few conversations will spark new ideas about all sorts of things. So the big opportunity is ideas that are going to get sparked in the hubbub of events. Do you think there's a danger, or what is the danger perhaps, of everybody running their event in October? Like, it's all happening.
Well, I think that's already been talked about, isn't it? And that is where we come back to the fact the event space is saturated. There's nothing that we can do about that. And obviously, when you are rescheduling your event, you have to look at why your event is going to stand out, why people are going to come to yours if they're going to Adweek the week after, if they're going to another event the day before. You know, what makes yours different, which again kind of comes back to my kind of original point around budget. And one question, for example, if I use that as an example, one question is only open to 150, 200 people. It's members and guests only, which it's not a sort of exclusive thing. It's more just that it retains the conversation because it has to be intimate. Otherwise, it doesn't add any value. And it's in London for one day. And it spans so many different industries, from fashion to healthcare to music to marketing to advertising. And so I was really confident that it would be unique enough to be able to hold it on September the 30th. And a lot of our members would want to come because it's our biggest event of the year. Yeah. Obviously, if you're running a marketing event that's been moved and it's specific to marketing technology and you've had to postpone it to September, then don't run it at the same time as Mexico. But any good event manager wouldn't do that anyway. So I think but then again, that creates opportunity, right? Because you can then run it in a month where other things aren't happening, but you can also do it in a different format or a different way, using different budget, so that it does stand out from the crowd. Yeah. Which I think is really important. But I mean, for me, this all does come back to kind of, this does give us a bit of a time to refine and reframe. And look at what we're doing it, and then that lends through, because you'll get more budget, you'll secure more budget, you'll create more opportunity for yourself. And we've all been mandated to stay indoors for the last 3.5 weeks. So by the time we are able to come back to the normal that we left behind, such as it will be, and actually invest in these conversations, and be with each other and learn more, and look to what our events are doing and what difference they're going to make, they're going to be well received. Yeah. Cool. Get a good point to end on, I think, as I inhale a fly through the open window. Cool. Sorry about that. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's really not pretty. We're going to get to some questions. Let's if you've got questions for Sarah, please pop them in the chat. Katie is doing a sterling job of keeping the chat going and seeing what's going on. On our way there, while you're typing your questions into the chat, a quick advert, although not that much of an advert because we're not selling, but anybody who is thinking they need a central source of truth right now for their service, sales and marketing data and some better reporting on what people are doing and what's working and what's not, we are doing a free HubSpot setup for 60 days for new HubSpot clients because we realize that money uncertainty has got us all a bit screwed, and we want to help people make sure that they're levering the opportunity as we come out the other side. So that's Noisy Little Monkey's advert for our exclusive deal with HubSpot. Katie, what questions do we have?
We currently don't have any. Has anyone
no questions
brave enough?
We were so on it. We mentioned I did get one that was at me privately because someone was very gently telling me to stop encouraging people to break the law, which I think is perfectly legit. But yeah, I think if we don't have any questions, the kids next door have been let out from their homeschooling, and you're going to begin to appreciate the language of the Bristol playground from the back garden next door. And I'll have to shut this window again. So if we don't have any questions, I would just say thank you so much for coming along. People can reach you on Twitter and LinkedIn, Sarah, if they want to ask you questions afterwards. Guys, if you are looking for other inspiration, next week we're speaking to Sanjay Singh, co-founder of a corporate video agency called Life Media. He's amazing. We're talking about video for business. Same sort of format as this, shuts window because C word was used. And we're talking to Alan Thorpe, who runs the sales and marketing for Indicia Conoco Minolta, one of the biggest advertising agencies in the world. Yeah, they're really excited that the Olympics, the Euros, Wimbledon, all sporting events have been cancelled because they buy all the hoardings around the edge of them and do lots of corporate entertainment. So he's going to be interesting to talk to on Thursday. And then if you want to join us for a drink and wind down the week, tomorrow, not Friday, because it's Good Friday, but tomorrow, Thursday at 4, and then Fridays going forward, we get together for a drink and we play some silly Zoom games. And we occasionally have an inspirational speaker come join us. We'd love to see you there. Until then, thank you very much, Sarah, for joining us.
Pleasure. I hope that was useful. And obviously, if anyone does have any questions or I can help in any way during this time with just advice, then by all means, feel free to drop me a line. I'd be very happy to do that.
Brilliant. Sarah is so useful for running events. I would encourage you to do that, particularly if you're having a refocus about the why. That's where she really helped us greatly, and then a practical application of how to execute that. So yeah, thanks again everybody. I'm gonna hang up now, and Sarah, I'll give you a call in a minute, see how you're getting on.